Hey folks, this is Tolly and welcome to some more game dev. Coming back for stream number 2 today. Earlier today we spent a couple hours working on getting some item pickups up and running. We can see that in here. Realistically, it's kind of like fake item pickups that we got up and running, and this afternoon I want to spend some time trying to get like an actual item with the inventory system up and running, so that we can pick up something and actually change it in our inventory. But I still feel like we got a pretty good handle this morning, kind of talking through and figuring out exactly how we want to handle these pickups. So we can pick up this sword, we get a custom cutscene. At this point, we turn off the object. I'd like there to be more animations, but we'll figure that out as we go. And then we have disabled the object. And then we also, near the end of the stream, figured out a way to make it so that that prop that I just turned off manually from the cutscene now is checking a specific flag to see if that cutscene has happened. So if we reload the whole area and all the props get regenerated, it won't recreate that prop of the sword because that cutscene has already happened. So you won't be able to come up here and be able to interact with this object again. Last thing I think we need to figure out on this kind of thread or this line is right now we can't walk through this spot even though there's no longer a sword here. So we're going to need to figure out some way to dynamically change the walkability of a tile and have that be determined by some flags, which I think is going to be helpful when we get into like hidden paths and stuff. The ability to make it so an area is now suddenly something you can walk on, whereas by default the logic is that you can't walk there. I think that'll be kind of helpful. So I guess let's kind of follow that line first and just start there and see where that leads us. So we have this idea of like the prop having an entity ID, which is how we're toggling this specific prop off and on during the cutscene. And then we say that this has a required flag. Let's see if we can get the system set up a little bit more with a little bit more flexibility to it. So right now we have simply a single flag. I would like to eventually be able to have multiple flags that you can choose from. But we're gonna still kind of set it up with one, but we're gonna give a little bit of extra logic here. It's not flag required state. What is it? Flag type? Flag required state has it. It is a flag status is the enum we're looking for. So we're going to make a new flag status value here inside of the prop loader, and then inside of the prop editor where we create the text field, we're now going to make a enum field, which we can use this as a reference for how to do that. And we are going to get the what did I just say? Flag status. And we are going to do some casting here for the flag status. Pass this value into here. And then I guess this is an important point, which is what the flag required ID. I guess this is required status is probably a good way to say it. Required flag status? That's pretty clear. So if we come back in here, we should be able to see that drop down now. After Unity does a think. Do we have the debugger still on? We don't. Okay. Yeah, so now we can set this to active or completed, and this is the status that is required for this prop to spawn. So in order for this prop to appear, the status of this cutscene must be not started. So then if we come back into here, we just need to transfer that data across here in core data. So we're using the prop required flag. We just need to pass in that variable we just created that we're setting from the editor into here. And that should allow us to control that. And then I just want to double check on the tile itself in here. We're saying should load is making sure. Now we can double check to make sure it is valid. No, if it is not true, we return false. It shouldn't load. If none of the flags said that they shouldn't load, we default to true. And if we should not load, then continue. This logic is still a little weird and mind-bendy, but it's functional, and I'm going to move on. So we just want to make sure that this is still working with this new customization. So we'll set the prop to not started, walk back up and interact and make sure that it's still functioning the exact same way. But now we can make it so that, say, the prop appears only after you've completed some other cutscene would be something we could do now. In fact, let's just test that as like an extra piece of functionality here. So we'll take this flag sword pickup, which is the cutscene. We'll add that flag here and make it so that this flag must be completed in order for the sign to appear. Now, this flag system is not dynamic. It doesn't update the props continuously. It only updates the props on map load, so we'll have to still leave and come back in order to see the sign appear. Let's try... Nope, too much. Sure, we'll leave this one on in the background for now. Okay, so coming up here, interact. Okay, and then the sign is not here. Oh, that's funny, but the interact is. Yeah, because the interact isn't tied to the prop. The interact is like a separate system. And then the sign appears and the sword is gone. Okay, so the prop side of the work is functional, but this kind of reveals one thing that I did miss, which is that these interacts aren't tied to specific props, they just exist. This is the flag we want to set with this interact tile, but we might also want to have a list of required flags. For each interact. So interacts also don't spawn if the required flag is not true. Sure. So then we could come into this one, and if we set this up the same way, we want this to... For this to appear, it'd be the same logic, right? It would be identical. This flag would need to be required here, and it must be completed. So that's the data side of that coming across. Then we need to just make sure that's actually transferring. So how do we do that? We're going to check the trigger name and see how that's being transferred across. That's in here. Okay. This is already at the instantiation time, so we can just add an if check here. Perfect. Hello, and welcome to First Time Chatter. I can't pronounce that name. I'm not going to try, but it says cool art. Yeah, thank you. My wife Drixie has done all of the art for the project. She started learning pixel art about 5 years ago now when we started this project. Eekfos? Still not enough. Sorry. Pronunciation is the bane of my streaming. And I still haven't found a way to be subtle about it. So then we have... Yeah, we started in early 2020, but to be fair, most of what we've been doing has been working on um, more tools and game engine stuff and less of a video game for a lot of the period of time. The first 3 years was working on technically a separate title called Era of Embers, which was meant to be like a full Final Fantasy world exploration game. And then in the past year and a half or so, I guess almost 2 years now, we've been working more towards this infinite retries isekai type game that's still going to be kind of a linear game but based in like one region and area, and has a much smaller scope than that kind of more magnum opus thing that we were originally building towards. But we took all of the tooling from Era of Embers and we kind of ported all that RPG work that we were doing and built it into like a core library that can be used across both projects. So it's not really a 5-year project as much as like 5 years of tooling and development that we've been building. So I don't know, it's hard to describe that. But hopefully that makes some sense. Yeah, I've been doing game dev stuff professionally as a software engineer, then designer, then software engineer, then designer, and now technical designer, for 15 plus years now. And so like this side project has been something that has allowed me to like really kind of create a lot of stuff for my own like forever tools to make games easier. I'm trying to figure out whether or not this flag is true, which we're already doing that with should prop load, with a list. So we could probably just reuse this should prop load. And so we need to make sure that the ability ID that for this interact is not empty or white space. And we need to make sure that the tile data dot interact data dot required flags list is true. And if both of these things are true, then we should load, and that should be all we have to do. I don't like this name. Our flags valid is better. Still not great, but we'll move with that. Move on with that. Did I meet Drixie there? I met Drixie outside of work, and then as at some point Drixie was like, would you like to make a video game? And I said yes, and she was like, I could learn art. I've done painting and physical medium. And I was like, yeah, cool. And then we realized very quickly that a lot of those skills are useful, but don't necessarily transfer exactly. But we've been having a lot of fun kind of figuring out, and it's like interesting bringing her into quote unquote my world of like game dev, which is something I'm so very close to. And yeah, no, she doesn't work professionally as an artist. I will say that she still thinks a lot of this looks bad. Her opinion of her art is still very low. Even though I stream this and people are like, this pixel art looks really good. The art's really cool. The way that it works is very interesting. And people are just like really excited about it. And I try and share that. And she's like, oh, I guess. But she doesn't quite, she still doesn't see it. Because she started so, she started in kind of a not so happy space with it. It was definitely a learning process to get to this level. Yeah, probably correct, but still, I'm trying to convince her of like, no, this looks really good. It's really, really good. Okay, so the interact is no longer loading now that we added the required flags to it. So we just want to make sure that if we leave and come back, and this is not a for real case, we wouldn't, well, I don't know, maybe we'd have a poster or something appear that you could interact with. But I just want to test the functionality here. Yeah, so that interact now is functional at least one time. My cutscene is not set to repeatable right now, but yeah, so that is working. So now we can have required flags on props, and we can have required flags on interacts. And if those flags are not set to the correct state, then it will not load on map generation. Cool. So then where are we at? So that's kind of the main loose thread. No, there's one other loose thread we want to try and follow up on. So I said that we have it so this interact is now disabling the sword prop based off the required flag, but the type of tile this is, whether it's walkable or a wall, which pit isn't really a thing at this time, but it's more for flyers when I eventually have flying combatants that might fly outside the map. But right now it's set to a wall and it'll forever be a wall. So we need some way of dynamically changing a tile's walking type based off of, I would assume, flags. Yeah, it's probably going to be based off the same system. Yeah, the art's really cool. I'll show some more stuff real quick here, but if I hit a debug to run out of time, we can go back to the goddess realm, in which we come back here and meet with the goddess again. And technically, because we're loading this from the first ever time, it's like giving us the very first cutscene of the game, because it doesn't realize that we're loading from a random point, so the flags for these are not set up, which I can fix. And then she sends us down to the Demon Lord Castle on the very first run, and I'm going to skip through some of this as well. So we can come down through here. And then we're supposed to walk through and acquire an object, but if we leave the Demon Lord's Castle again through debug and just go back to the Goddess Realm, it doesn't realize that we didn't go through the whole sequence. And then we get one more set of dialogue here, and then technically the game is in like a finished tutorial kind of state. And then we can head down here and head out for our very first run on the... Oh yeah, I forgot I put this in. Drixie worked really hard to make this map, and then we proceeded to make a bunch of cloud cover to cover the whole thing up. So you can't see most of it. But we will slowly reveal sections of it as the player kind of makes their way through the environment. Even like I'd like to have more cloud cover, so some more of this stuff is actually hidden to start with. But this is as far as we've gotten so far with the cloud coverage. And then we can run back into here. This sends us back down. And this should take us back to this world. Okay, yeah, so that's all functional. Seems like everything's hooked up correctly. I will say this area looks way better. Yesterday's stream, we spent some time generating a bunch of props randomly. So given a like TSV file that like says like, hey, I want this to be floor anywhere there's an F, and then this is like a back tree, a center tree, bush, stone. I'm like essentially assigning each prop like a group of assets, and then I'm randomly choosing from a bunch of Drixie's art pieces to kind of build this space. It looks fine, but I still want to hand edit everything like I did for this map, because like I feel like this one just looks way more complete. It's not easy to get as a good zoom on it, but just like the amount of density here just feels way better to me. But I still feel like the generation tools help give at least a broad brushstroke. If I keep saying it's like throwing paint on the canvas for me, like when I'm doing the level design stuff, it's just giving me a starting point so that we can later come back through and like do more heavily modification of the props and like find ways of being like, oh, I think that maybe there should be like a stump in between here, or like this plant, and it'll just be easier to kind of modify these things a little bit. Most of these pebbles are too small. Like even something like that probably adds a little bit to the experience. Oh, this tile's set to walkable right now because it was pure grass. So I need to change that to wall. Anyways, small tour. So next thing is, how do we change the behavior of a tile, aka it's whether it's a walking or a wall, dynamically? I guess first step is let's dig into how the type actually works. So if we look at our prop tile, we have this, where is it? The prop tile up here has a tile type wall. And this is what's determining whether or not it's walkable. And this, when we generate the whole map, gets converted into our tile data objects and stored here. So this is the type of the tile, which is really, it's like walk type. Tile type is maybe too short of an enum for it. And then we set the, oh, this is for the generating of the floor texture. So that's not what we care about. On load, we transfer the tile type into the tile. Okay, this seems promising. And then this tile type inside the tile is used to determine how high the props are supposed to fall in. So during that, like, everything kind of falling in animation. This is to do with the water stuff, which is not functional at this time. This is moving things down slightly, so if something is set to pit, then it has a lower height because it's below the rest of the map. This is where we are loading it. There's more references attached to this one, and then this one here is setting it to pit. This is part of the actual ray casting of the environment to determine how high the floor is. Okay, so then this is the tile type that we actually care about then, most likely. Yeah, this has to do with the movement system. So if this is a valid type, we do a bit operation on it to see whether or not the type of movement that you're performing would be valid on that type of tile. Same here. Find tile by offset. So this is part of our ability system. So when we move, push, do anything with like the abilities of the character actually interacting with the world, it makes sure that the tile that we're finding is valid based off of whatever this effect expects. Okay. This all seems fine. Basically, everything is externally referencing this value. So if we just change tile type to be walkable, it will, well, it should dynamically make it so that the character can then step on it with any of the movement abilities, because as far as it's concerned, it's now a walk type. All the AI stuff should operate correctly as well. Yeah, nothing's being like stored in some weird way. So if we can find the tile that we care about, we can change that tile's walkability from wall to walkable. We just need some way of doing that. There's two problems, same two problems we just ran into. We have to both modify it dynamically at the moment of the cutscene. So we'll need to change that tile from the cutscene, and we'll need to make it so that from that point onwards, once the flag has been set, that tile is a space you can move through every time you reload the map. Let's start with the cutscene, because I think that's going to be easier. And then we'll see what that tells us as we solve that problem, and it might make the second version easier to comprehend. So if we come into sequence steps, this is back-end stuff. Can we go to board? So board has us manipulating tiles. So in this folder, we probably want to add a new one for changing the information. So this is a tile-based sequence step. What does that mean? What is a tile-based sequence step again? It's basically just a sequence that holds a tile and has an XY built into it by default, and has some helper functions to find the tile by its XY coordinates. Okay, so then that means that we should just be able to copy this reveal tile, because this will be singular. I don't think we... actually... There's probably a world where we might want to modify multiple tiles at the same time. And there's no reason not to use the better version. Yeah. Okay. Let Visual Studio catch up. We'll copy this one, the plural version. And then instead of reveal tiles, this will be... How do I make this really short as a word? It's like the pathing of a tile is maybe a better word for what I'm trying to get at. Adjust tile. So like pathing is a better word, coming back to this like months later, maybe even years later since I wrote a lot of this stuff. I think I like the word pathing more, but that's just more confusing without changing everything. So I think I need to be consistent. So I think it's adjust tile type sequence step. As much as I'm not liking the way that sounds, I think it's consistent. And then if we want to change it, we can change it everywhere. Wrong file. Yeah, this one. Adjust tiles type. Sure. So then we're going to need the tile type that we're adjusting to dynamically. I don't think we need a delay in here. This becomes types. This becomes by default. Probably in most cases we're going to maybe make something a walkable tile opposed to making it a wall. We need to do core dot. Yeah, it's conflicting with the Unity engine. Okay, so then we're going to loop through all the tiles, and then we're going to do tile type is just equal to the new type that we had set. And I think that's it. Because we already have this like base level tiles sequence, this is all we have to do. Everything else should be working for us. Okay. So then we just need to adjust the cutscene to use that sequence step we just built. Okay. W01 sword pickup. Add board, adjust tile type. So now this will be a position. How do we do this in other spots? Because it's just taking a string. Do we split it? Yeah, we split based on comma. So this should be 8, 8 is the tile we're modifying, and we're making it walkable. And that should be all we have to do. So when we walk up and pick up the sword, the tile should now be walkable. This was the easier problem to solve, though. Okay, can I walk? I can walk. So this is now a walkable tile. the harder problem is now going to be the like consistent version of this that's going to happen forever on this prop. I guess so this prop tile is currently controlling whether or not you can move over this location. It almost feels like this should be separate, but I understand why I joined it, because essentially, by default, if there's a prop here, then this is the thing that should control whether or not you can move on this tile. If there was a separate, like, indicator, it would be annoying to manage. That being said, perhaps what we're doing here is an override, not a base functionality. Because, like, I don't know if I want to make it so that, like, we change this. Like, I don't want to have to come into every single one of these and set up flags, or the lack of flags for what type it should be. Like, I don't really want to be like, oh, if these flags are true, make it walkable. If these flags are true, make it a wall. I want it to be more overriding than that. So I think what I might want to do is add like a pathing override tile. And then this will control a different kind of set of conditions for this thing. I don't know. I'm still parsing it mentally myself. So this becomes pathing override tile. I'm already breaking my thought on like keeping consistency here, but I want to have this particular one be very readable. I don't know, maybe I'm making a mistake, but we're gonna find out. Public required flags. This is probably a list. Again, I like having it be a list when possible, because if we need to, we can just have it be one entry, but there might be situations where we need multiple flags to be in certain states in order for something to happen. So then if this is the state, then we need the tile types override tile type, and this is gonna need core dot. Okay, path override tile has required flags and has a override tile type. So then if we come back into the green dot here for 8,8, we should be able to add this component separately. Not on the interact tile. On the prop tile, I think I want to add it here, override. It could be a separate piece, but I think it's going to be easier to manage if it's on the same, like, object. That could probably be true for the interact as well, but the interacts I tend to, like, move around a bit more. This is going to be, like, specifically at 8,8 at all times. The interact, it feels like it should be more flexible than that. So if this flag is completed, we want to override this to walkable. I think that's what the data means, or what the data needs to be and what we're trying to say. Like if I'm I am the designer, but if I'm designing this work and I want to be quick in thinking about this, I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to add a pathing override. I'm going to say if these required flags are in these states, then I want to override to this value. Yeah. That makes sense. So now we need to go into our map editing system. So let's look at prop tile as an example. So if we find references for this thing, it is used in here where we go through every single component under the generate level data from world geo script. Maybe we copy this one because it's simpler. And we're going to want to find all the override path. Not finding it. Pathing override tile. Sure. And then for every one of the pathing override tiles, we're going to want to make sure it's active, which is something I just do for every single one of these groups. We're going to set the tile data here. Well, we're going to get the tile data for this specific position. And then from our core tile data, I think similar to how we have like a core tile interact data, I think we might want to have a core tile pathing override data. And I think actually that's what this is. This goes here. And I think this is just one of these. It's just a collection of this type of data. We can remove core from this just to make it a little more readable on the editor. And then we just have an instance of this public, this thing equal null. Again, we remove core tile from the variable name just to make it a little more readable. And then where does this get set? This is going to be inside of this for loop. Yep. So now it's literally the same thing. Prop or pathing. This value gets set to this value, which should be named pathing override tile. Perfect. So that data will get set in there. And then where does this data get used? Inside the tile. It gets used here to spawn stuff. In our situation, it's going to be, here's where we set tile type. And was there anywhere else where this gets set to something? It gets set to pit for, that's for generating. This is when we adjust it, which is fair. So we're going to say the adjust tile is higher, like priority or higher power. So if it overrides it after this, that's fine. So we're just going to check if we have a, if our tile data doesn't, if the tile data's pathing override data is not equal to null, then we're going to check if valid, our flag's valid for the tile data dot pathing override data dot required flags. And if the override flags are valid, we will set our tile type for this tile to be equal to the tile data dot pathing override data dot override tile type. I think that does it. This is a getter only. So yeah, the only spots where we change it in not from the generate versions, but the only spot we actually change tile type outside of this load function is right here in a cutscene. And so a cutscene is more powerful than an override. Perfect. So we do need to update this one more time. So this becomes walkable when the required flag of this cutscene is completed. And I think, in theory, no errors, that should make it so that after we interact with the sword, the cutscene will make it so that tile is walkable. And then if we leave and reload because the cutscene flag is completed, it will also override the walkability or the tile type to walkable. Man, I feel like walkable is becoming not a word. Can we go ×2? Yes. Okay. Ah. All right. So we have broke stuff. We has broke. I'm gonna guess somehow this is coming back with true. Yeah, because it... Interesting. I would expect it to have not set any of the tile datas. I'm gonna guess for whatever reason it decided to generate all of it with something other than null. So if we go look at W01 and we look at any one of these, pathing override, yeah, because it's a public value, it actually has something in it. So this can't be null. Fine. The way we'll deal with that then is we will make sure that the list.count is greater than 0. If you don't have any required flags, then you don't have any overrides that you need to make. I'm not thrilled about the amount of extra, like, data this is creating, but I mean, it's just making a list that's empty of values, whatever. If we need to optimize it, we can find a better way in the future. Okay. In theory, that should make it so we can move around now, because we're not going to be setting every single tile to a defaulted override value. Yeah, we can move. Perfect. It's walkable. We can leave. Oh, we failed. We haven't regenerated the data for the other file. So the other file still doesn't have this information. So this list doesn't exist. So we're just going to do that. Sure, that's safe. Small bug, easy fix. Okay. I will say this, I'm trying to think of something to fill the air with while we wait for this to load. And I feel like that's the thing that I really enjoy about doing this type of work while streaming, is normally my brain would default to going to watch a YouTube video for those 15 seconds of load time, and then I'd lose 5 minutes, I feel like, having to come back out of that. Whereas here, I can't just go watch a YouTube video, I'm on the air. And so that like keeps me so focused that I'm like, okay, I gotta, what's the next thing I'm gonna talk about? What's the next thing we're gonna solve? What's the next, rather than like wandering off mentally. Very helpful. I know this may not always be the most interesting content, but for me this is invaluable, even if no one's watching. Okay, that loaded properly. Let's head back. Looks like YouTube's struggling to keep the stream maintained. But in good development news, this is now walkable and remains walkable. I'm gonna double check that. I don't actually know if there's a way to double check that, because if I've interacted with the thing, it's true that that's now, like, that's functional. There's no way to like be like, oh, what's an edge case to test against? There isn't really one. I guess. Yeah, there is. There's a way of testing to make sure this is functional. What we can do is we can come into here, and we should be able to set this to not started. So if the cutscene hasn't happened, it should override the tile to walkable. So now we know that it will be related to this code we just wrote, not related to the cutscene, which is also modifying the tile. Again, loading and unloading the map is pretty much the same type of test. Excuse me. And I feel like this is an unnecessary one, but I just want to see it. Yeah, so now it's walkable, even though the prop itself says it should be a wall. Cool. So that is good. That is also solved. What else do we want to do today? Well, there's this name of the actual stream here. So this is going to be going into Game Foundations, which is what we're using for our inventory management system. And here we have all of the items that we have. These are all Era of Ember items that were built for that game, but they should be possible. They should be still usable in this version because the projects are shared in the same Unity. So we should be able to test giving ourselves one of these items and seeing via the Game Foundation's debugging, seeing the values update. So if we come into Game Foundations, go to Tools, Debugger, this shows us our current wallet, which is our currency. And then here's our current inventory. We have 5 healing potions, 5 antidotes, and 1 better sword. Oh, 2 better swords. So then if we come into here and we select one of our items like, I don't know, Armor 1 is one that we definitely don't have, and hit Add Item, that will add that item to our inventory list. And we can set values in here and modify them from their defaults, if we so choose. Okay. And then we can also delete that item. Cool, so this is still functional. It's been a while since I've touched any of this, but that kind of like Game Foundations package is still working. So then the question becomes, can we actually add an item from this interact? So if we do this interact, can we make it so that if we give it a item ID, it will try and add that to our inventory? Sure. Okay. So what would be an item that we could do? We could go into, I mean, we could try the same one, I guess. The easiest one to test is the armor. So we go back into inventory. The ID for that was armor_1. So if we copy that, paste that into here, we now wanted to grant this item to us. So this won't be done through the triggered cutscene. Going back to Balsamic to kind of talk through that. The idea here is that the triggered cutscene can unlock the ability and do other stuff like disabling objects and things for like custom cutscenes. But I think for like just the item variation, because I think this one is now good. I can like put a little like check next to this. Like it does this. We built that functionality. Actually, is there a symbol I could add? An icon? Check. Ah, cool. So we have triggering cutscenes on an item pickup. That is a thing we can do. But we can't set a flag or add a physical item that is gone to our inventory. So let's try and figure out this item one. So once we have... We're going to bring down the intensity a little. That might... Well, no, this might be fine. So, okay. So if we do... In here, we have the interact tile. This has the interact data, which we already know from just a moment ago looking through this. It's now going here to this one. And then this one is being passed through to the tile. And it's instantiating the ability. And then checking to see if it has some components and putting the trigger name in there. Okay, so if we want, we could make a new type of ability for a item-based... Yeah, there's some really neat stuff to do here, but we'll, like, there's some editor window type things we could be doing, because really, if we're changing... Okay, where are they? I'm going to just close some folders here. So if we come into design data, abilities, tile, we're currently using the interact cutscene. But if we make a variant from this one, create prefab variant, and we make this a item pickup cutscene. Grab this naming convention, punch that in there, and this will, oh shoot, I want to change this one to item pickup cutscene. Okay, so this one's item cutscene, this is interact, that's immediate. Okay, they're all set up with their own addressable IDs. So if we take this addressable ID and we were to change this from the sword one, actually, you know what, to make this even clearer, instead of replacing everything here, let's copy this interactable and move it over here to this chest. Just so that we have a different object to kind of see this change. So we can still have, maybe this says open because it's a chest instead. It won't have a trigger name, but it will have an item that it wants to pick up. And we'll say the ability we're going to use here is a cutscene item pickup cutscene. And then this won't have the... I think this one might not have the trigger. Oh, maybe it does. Maybe it's still triggering like a default one though. Maybe we don't have to put one in, but this one just has like an item cutscene that we repeatedly reuse. That could make sense. Okay, so then where would we put that cutscene? Let's make that cutscene and see where that lives. It's not going to be in the forest. There is a generic section. So can we come into here and go zone generic? And if we give it no room, does that work? Generic item pickup. We can give it a priority of somewhere in the 500s, which is medium priority. I don't know how you would end up having two cutscenes trying to activate at the same time, but we'll still give it a low priority so it doesn't override some sort of narrative thing we might want to have happen. Like maybe you enter onto the tile that triggers a cutscene and then you try and interact at the same time. I don't think that would work because of the timing of my systems. We should be safe to that, but we're still going to set it to 500. This will be repeatable. You can do this multiple times. It will need a trigger name, set default. So set default. Do I have to click out of that box? Yeah. So we get a double. It's still adding the room in here, even though it doesn't have one. I guess we could just add item. I mean, it couldn't hurt to to still organize some of these generic ones. So generic item pickup. I think I can change this relatively easily, so I shouldn't get stuck on this, but sure. Generic reusable will be the folder, and this trigger name will be an item pickup, which we'll reuse for a bunch of stuff. In terms of ability response, I don't think it needs one. In most situations, it looks like we default to end of turn. We can try that. I think because it's being called immediately, it doesn't really care in this situation. Yeah, it's not happening on movement. It's not happening on introing into a room. Like, intro is basically on room load. We'll leave it as end turn. Because this is reusable and repeatable, it won't have any required flags. And maybe for the sake of just like having some data here, we'll just have one entry, which is just hero saying loot. Sure. And that'll close after that happens. So let's create that sequence. So we made a folder, reusable, item pickup, and item pickup dialog. Item pickup is reusable or repeatable. It has this trigger name. So if we come back in here, we should be able to set this trigger name in here permanently for this variation. And now this variant won't need you to put in a trigger in here because it has one baked into this ability. Like, it almost feels like I should be dragging the ability into this thing as like an actual object so that this script could reference it, and then based off of the effects that it has underneath, it shows the correct fields for that ability. Like, this ability will care about an item, which I'm going to write here in a second, so it should show item. I'm going to worry about that improvement later, but I'm going to keep that in the back. You know, I'm going to write it down. I'm going to write it down. Yeah, I really like that idea of like looking at the prefab and dynamically figuring out what parameters that prefab can have edited based off what you drag in here. But at this time, that's a little overkill, and let's just get things functional and we'll worry about improvements after it all works. So if we come into here and we look at this item pickup cutscene, it'll default trigger this cutscene, which right now doesn't do much. Eventually I'll try and have it like play an animation and reveal some UI and do some other work. But I think the question then becomes, where do we actually add the item? I think that's all in here. So we're gonna make a new cutscene effect. Yeah. We're going to copy this one. And we're going to make this an add item cutscene effect. Cool. Visual Studio is having a big think. Big old think. Visual Studio decided to reopen itself. Okay, we good? I think we're good. So in here, we're going to rename this. This will be Add Item Ability Effect. Still having a big think. All right. Come into here. Add that. This will need a public string item name. And then do we have an add item? We have the add item ability effect we just made, but do we have an add item sequence step? It does not look like it. So if we come back up in here, we look at our sequence steps. This is all our ability stuff. Our sequence is lower. Yes. Where do I want to put a sequence step for this? I guess it's kind of back-end related. I feel like adding an item feels like a back-end option, kind of operation. Oh, we're adding another class. Oh no. Okay, it looks like we're fine though. Add item sequence step. And this will be where most of the work actually happens. Add item. This will have an item ID that it's going to need. Maybe it needs more than that eventually. It might need like an amount or something, but for the time being, we'll just have it do the one thing. Don't need this. Cool. And then item inventory. Inventory. Nope. We had a test store open earlier that we... Inventory manager. What does this need? This needs a bunch of Game Foundation stuff. We should just be able to get away with just the first one, it looks like, though. The rest of them aren't actually being used. So if we do Game Foundations, and then we just do Inventory Manager. It looks like it's create item is the call. Given ID. Okay, so we should be able to do create item with this value. It looks like generally we take that and store it in this item, inventory item. And then from there, we get the property amount and we increase it by some amount. So we'll just say by 1 for the time being. So when we add an item, we're adding 1 of that item. So yeah, let's just get ahead of it. We'll also do int amount, which can be in most situations 1. But I think I just want to have this be an option. It feels like it's going to be valuable to be able to control this. Okay, so we can set the amount that we're adding. So we could do like open a chest and add 5 potions if we wanted. So then inside of the ability effect, this is now creating the new add item sequence step, non-blocking. And it's going to need to pass in the item name, and we'll also make an amount here that it can pass through. Perfect. Very simple ability effect. It's literally just sending through to a sequence. It like when I do some of this stuff, it can look from the outside like why not just use the sequence directly? But there's a lot of value to the abilities because the abilities have like runtime knowledge of like there's a bunch of like Blackboard like conditional operations and things that can happen and only targeting certain enemies, and there's a bunch of like work that happens with an ability effect in a lot of situations, or a lot of customization that can go on the effect itself. But oftentimes effects can be very simply just trigger a sequence essentially, or create a sequence step and add it to the list of sequence steps to be triggered after the ability is finished processing. And sometimes that delayed operation can also be very handy as well. So then we'll add an item, we'll add a new add item ability effect here, drag that up. It shouldn't need anything to be conditional here. This value here will be empty. We'll default it to 1. I don't think we care about the targeting stuff. Yeah, that only needs to be on 1 of the sequence steps, so we can get rid of it here. So add item will just add 1. This means that if we want to modify this value, we are going to need to pass that information down another level, or another. We're going to have it another level up, which will be here. So you can give it an amount. All right. So then how did the trigger name get set? That was in here. So it tries to get the ability effect underneath. And if it doesn't find it, it doesn't do anything with it. So in this situation, we're going to try and see if whatever cutscene we're using, if it has a add item. And if it does, we're going to set its item name to whatever the item name on this interact data is. We're going to have to add brackets because we're going to need 2 lines here, 1 to also modify the amount, and that'll go here. Perfect. So now if we want, we can change the amount. I guess it's not an if we want it now, because of this change we have to add an amount at this level. We should default that to 1, not 0. Because I don't know what it means to add a 0 of an item. Okay. Does this just work now? It feels like I should have to do more, but I think that's everything. We just need to make sure we actually save, so all of this gets put into this tile. And now when we walk up to it, we'll interact, we'll trigger a cutscene. That cutscene will have been populated with the correct parameters. That cutscene will fire, we'll do loot dialogue from hero, and then after we hit OK on that, it'll add the item to our inventory. Window, game foundations, tools, debugger. So we only have these things here, but after we go up to the chest and interact with it, we should see armor appear. There is no prompt for looking at this. Interesting. Okay. Why? Fundamental flaw with the requirements, I think. Same flaw we ran into a moment ago with the other systems. So... are flags valid? I think this needs an extra check in here, which is checking to see if the required flags list that we're giving it has a count greater than 0. And then if so, return true? No, because that's going to do the same thing. It should return true either way. No, that shouldn't matter. If the list is empty, it should come back as true and then not load the prop. Okay, so it's another spot. So it's not the prop loading that's failing. It's not the overriding. It's here where we create the interact. Yeah, so if we have an ability ID, which we do, and we don't have any required flags, so it should come into our flags valid, loop through all 0 flags, and then return true. So then we should get into here, and it should instantiate the ability on that tile. Okay. I'm gonna try moving this and moving it back. Moving, saving, move it back, save. And then we'll try hitting play again. Actually, one other thing I want to do, let's turn back on the sign by default, because we did try... Oh, stop. Oh no, I started again. We made it so that the sign only appears now after the cutscene. Or did we already clear that out? I'm gonna double check. Are we debugging or something? No? Okay. Cool. So if we come back over here... No, this has a required flag. Let's clear that out. Click on this one. Let's get rid of the flag on that one. And let's see if this default basic cutscene that's just like triggering a bit of dialogue is also not appearing without some sort of required flag. Because we definitely don't want the base functionality for these that they have to have required flags. Required flags, if they exist, should block them from appearing or functioning. But they shouldn't be required. Required flags not being... No, but they by default, if there are no required flags, they should just be on. Okay, this one works. Still triggers, but this one doesn't. Interesting. Is it the generic cutscene? Trigger name, repeatable. That should all be fine. I guess we can check to see whether or not the object was created. Let's take a quick look at the prefab. Inside of here, this is creating trigger names empty. Is that why? I don't want to have to set one. But it's going to replace it with nothing. It's going to replace it even though I don't want it to. So string dot is null empty. If the trigger name that you are getting from your interact data is not null or whitespace, then set the cutscene trigger. Otherwise, if it's empty, don't overwrite it. I think that's what's happening. And I think it doesn't appear or show any prompt or anything simply because it is an empty trigger name and the system has a bunch of logic to see if the specific trigger is interactable. Yeah. Sometimes I figure things out. Sometimes. All right. Change up again. Sure. That's closer to being something that works. Interesting. That's a pretty fundamental break. Huh. Why? But why? Yeah, it's just saying that it tried to complete the turn. And while trying to complete the turn, it hit a coroutine that is null from our sequence system. Like, what? What do you mean? That one's got me stumped. I may have figured the other one out mentally, but this one I'm gonna have to dig through. Yeah. Let's at least check the cutscene object and see what its current data is. I didn't pick up cutscene. Oh, we have the item added to our inventory with an amount of 0. Okay. So it did fire the cutscene. It didn't play any dialogue. It should have triggered this one. It did not. It should have added the armor one with 1 amount. It did not. I cannot move. Let's take another look at the item pickup. Should have been repeatable. What's interesting is this should be blocking. The dialogue should prevent the player, or should prevent the sequence from continuing. Some of these other ones are set to none. Maybe that could be the problem. Unlockable characters with the hydration. Appreciate it. Wait. No, where? I had my water. One second. I gotta go track it down. Okay. That means I haven't drank any water for an hour and a half, so appreciate the reminder. Let's see if this one triggers okay. Yeah, no errors. What about this one? Still broken. Did it add the item to our inventory again? I would assume it did. It did. Okay, so it's adding the item, but it's not triggering the dialogue, and it's hard breaking the entire game. Okay, out of curiosity, what happens if we swap this object with the interact version? And what if we tell it to use this reusable cutscene instead? It won't have any armor to add, but does it still break in the same way? Because this will tell me whether or not the cutscene we're triggering is the problem. Because if it's the cutscene, that tells us something. If it's not the cutscene, I think that implies that somehow adding an item is breaking the game. Interesting. Super interesting. Somehow this variation, what is the interact one doing differently? I guess it is clearing the right click trigger and then just doing an animation. Well then, by that logic, always clear right click trigger or right trigger. Is that required for some reason? Because the other two do that and this one doesn't. So if I add that in and then switch back, does it work in that situation? So get rid of that. Go back to the item pickup variation of the object. One other thing we could try too is setting the trigger name to see if maybe somehow leaving the trigger name empty causes the problem. I don't know why it would. Like, it's just deciding whether or not to override the string, but we can give that a shot as well if this is still not working. Might also want to just move the chest to be closer so we don't have to walk as far to test this. Yeah, that broke. just going to move the interact over here. And before we do anything else, I'm going to make sure we still have the same problem when we move the interact. It might be time to close and reopen Unity soon. It feels like hitting play is taking like 20 seconds, which is abnormal. Yeah, broken still. Okay, let's try giving it the trigger name. Does that somehow... Is this for some reason required? If this is still broken, we'll try the immediate variation. This is still broken. Okay. What if we use the immediate prefab instead? That won't add the item, but is it maybe the interact part of it that's making it so these function, but immediate wouldn't? Like, do we need to have an animation in between? Like some sort of timing issue? Because all of these cutscenes I've been playing for yesterday and today have all been of the interact variation, and maybe there's some sort of timing bug that got introduced that was... I didn't notice simply because of the small delay of the character doing an animation before the cutscene plays. It is not, so immediate also works fine. Okay, so then we'll take this a step further. What if we take the add item and add that to the immediate so that hopefully they are the same? So we'll save that out. This would now find an item, so it'll set these two on there. And now the only difference between interact immediate and interact item pickup should... Well, there should be no difference. They should be identical at this point. So it's not a timing bug to do with the animation then. So I would expect this to break now. I would expect it's something to do with adding the item that breaks the game. If this doesn't break, I'm going to be super confused. Okay, so the game is broken, and we are unable to move. But we also got the dialogue. We're going to go back to this variation. Huh. Yeah. Also, after this test for closing and reopening Unity, it'll take a bit, like 30 seconds, but we're losing 20 seconds every time we hit play, so it's worth it to close and reopen. Yeah, no dialogue, just breaks. So what's the difference between the two of them? This one does ability, exit, line 4, ability effect, that's all the same. Intro, just empty. Clear, trigger, oh, play immediate and blocking. Is play immediate and blocking true for the interact variation as well? It is. Is that the difference between them? Oh, I guess if we don't hit play immediate, it won't play until the end of the turn? Or at some later point? Okay. I mean, if all of my cutscenes all play immediate and they all are blocking, then I probably should just apply that to the base version of the cutscene prefab. But let's see what impact this has. Okay, it plays. But then we have the coroutine breaking. Okay. Okay, that's, you know what? I'll take it. I'll take it. So we know why the dialogue wasn't playing, and that's because we didn't have the dialogue set to immediate or blocking. So if we get rid of the trigger name, now we should also have this work. So there's two bugs. There was bug number one, the base variation of the cutscene didn't have all the parameters that we need in order for it to work. And that's like, I guess I don't really know why I'd need trigger cutscene non-immediate. Oh yeah, I do. We might use that ability effect for like performing a counterattack or something. And we might want to have the sequence play at the end of the turn after the enemy has finished their action. So yeah, there's reasons why we might want to have it not trigger, but for our interactions, it should almost always be true. Okay, so I think, what else? The shove cutscene? This one's pretty complicated, but does this also do it? It does. So every single one of these has these values true. So we're going to make that change. And so now that should no longer be modified. We can just come through each of these and then just revert each of these, which is funny because we're reverting to the same value, but we're just going to make it so that it's very clear this is base functionality. Okay, so that's bug number one, but it's not the whole problem. So then let's clean up this and not have an item add inside of the immediate cutscene. And then in here, this add item is what's breaking things, I believe. So if we copy this and then delete it, save, and then go back in and try again, does it work fine? I would imagine it would. This is going to be hard to find. This is going to be a weird bug. I have a feeling something about adding an item to our inventory fundamentally changes the character in some way for some dumb old error of embers reason. The previous project's setup, yeah, because this didn't break, and I can still move around and do stuff. So for whatever reason, adding an item to the character's inventory is just breaking the state machine completely. All right, it's fine. So we'll add this back in. Why would adding armor to the inventory of the player cause the combat state machine to completely break? Windows, Game Foundations, Inventory. No, not Inventory. My bad. Windows. Oh, also, I said I was going to close and reopen. Okay, we'll do that after this test. Game Foundations, Tools, Debugger. So we have 3 items in our inventory, which we always add by default, which is Potion, Antidote, and Better Sword, which we're not even using in this game, but that's what we have. So we say loot, and then after we click through that, it does add the armor from this interaction. The amount is not being set correctly, which is odd. We did see that that was set as a correct parameter of here. Yes, it is adding 1. So let's go through here, add item, get property amount. Oh, do we need to do something to set it after the fact? Test store. That was our example we were using. Yeah, we do need to do a set property on the item. Do we need to do any kind of cleanup after? No. Could that be causing our problem? It seems unlikely, but maybe by not having a amount, it causes something else to break? We're going to close. We're going to close Unity. I'm doing it this time. We're going to refresh because it's getting really slow. Okay. Oh, it's still having a big think. All right, close Unity. And then reopen. Okay. So, I mean, technically speaking, we have it so you can add an item from the item pickup system. It's just when you add the item, it completely breaks the game. All right, we have reopened. Hopefully it's quicker to play now. Seems a bit quicker. All right, come over here, interact, loot. Still getting the error, so it's not about the item being added. Something about the return value. Return null should be fine in this situation. Our call stack is completely dead too. It's not going up high enough because it's coming from a coroutine. So we can't really see what's happening that's causing this problem. We're not sure exactly which coroutine is failing. We're gonna have to go through step by step and see where it breaks. That's unfortunate. All right, we'll come into here because it looks like this is the line that's causing the problem. Let's do debug, attach. No, that's not right. Debug, attach to Unity, enable debugging for this session. Okay, so that's set up like that. Then we can come over here, start again, and then the problem is we're going to get hit on every single breakpoint. Sequences happen all the time. Everything's pretty much a sequence. Yeah, everything's a sequence. So let's take the breakpoint out for now. Let's turn off all of whatever these breakpoints are from whenever I was doing last time I was debugging. Have it set up so that we're ready to hit the button to trigger the sequence. Go back a couple steps, put our breakpoint back in, and then interact. Loot! We are currently on 3 sequence steps. We are currently on index 2, so we are about to do trigger cutscene reusable. Interesting. Did we not just see that already happen, though? We're hitting some pixel alignment stuff, and we're already broken. What? Oh. Is it an ordering thing? So we're gonna hit this button. We're on index 0 of a sequence step that's manipulating the dialog box to close it down. Okay, now we're on step 1, which is an action sequence step, which is cleaning up the object, the dialog box we just created. It's invoking that sequence, and that's fine. Then we're going to hit index 2, which is the delay. So that's fine. We're just doing a delay. Delaying for an amount of seconds. Then we're going to hit step 3, which is an action sequence. And the action it's performing is dialog close completely. That's fine. Nothing should be a problem there. Now we're getting back out to a step 2 sequence, which is the dialog and a base action. Okay. So this is the cutscene playing, and we're on step 1, which is telling the cutscene manager, hey, we finished this thing. So if we come into here, we're essentially coming in and setting the state to complete. Yeah, we're setting the cutscene flag. That's fine too. So there's nothing problematic with that. Now we're on step 2 of the trigger cutscene. The first step was an action. And the action was to clear the right trigger. So what's weird about this is it feels like we just did this. Oh, I'm counting wrong. Okay, we're... Oh, my goodness. I know what the problem is, and I've seen this problem a number of times, and every time it comes up, it costs me half an hour, and it's because of a fundamental problem with my sequence system. I love my sequence system. It makes things very simple, very easy to do, but if I make this one mistake, it always gets me, and I cannot keep it in mind. If we are creating a sequence step, and that sequence step does not have any kind of weight, it is simply returning null as its enumerator type, I cannot set it to blocking false, because if it is blocking false, it will try and start a coroutine with that null enumerator. Okay, so we could fix this. What we could do is, instead of directly sending this information out, we could instead check to see if the enumerator that we get back is null. And if it is null, if it's not null, start the coroutine. Otherwise, just invoke it like we do down here. But the fundamental problem is really like a data side issue. Realistically, if it is a sequence that can't be blocked, I shouldn't be modifying this value. But every single sequence step has this. So I guess more fundamentally, the problem is that there should be a step in between. And yeah, so I could fix it in the sequence by adding a bit more logic checking, but that adds extra processing time. And sequences happen all the time, so we want this to be super clean. So instead, we'd rather build our classes in such a way that this can't happen. So in here, this is using a default logic sequence step, which inherits from iSequence. I think anywhere that we need the blocking, it should probably come from like a blocking sequence step. And the base version of this shouldn't have this parameter. It's fine. I'm gonna... I can't refactor the entire sequence system right now, So what we're going to do is we're going to try and save ourselves in the future so that this doesn't happen again. Did you check if you set blocking to true on a sequence step that returns null? And to be fair, that's what the error was. The error was literally you're trying to start a coroutine on null. That's what that's saying. I just didn't see it. You're right, unlockable characters. It is time to hydrate again. My code just works until it doesn't. Yep. Okay, that's functional. So we can add an item, we can trigger a cutscene, that item gets added to our inventory. Clearly that cutscene is not very informative. It is not like showing the item or an icon to represent the item or really doing much of anything to let you know that that happened besides looking at the debugger. That's fine. We can polish things up, but functionally we are walking up to that thing, we are interacting, and it is adding an item that is coming from the tile data essentially to our inventory, and we now have that item. I suppose we could try doing something to indicate what item you've picked up. What would we do? What would we do? So inside of here, we add the item. What does like shove do? It has a bunch of stuff going on. Yeah, none of this is UI related though. This is all just related to moving the character and doing some screen effects and stuff from when the character smashes into something. So then for the item pickup, we are looking for some sort of an ability effect that modifies the UI. What modifies our UI? We have user feedback effects. That sounds promising. Custom hit notification. That's super silly, but I bet you we could make like a damage number fly off of the character, which is the name of the item you picked up. Show ability effect. This also might be a really simple one to do. What if we did this one? So copy this. Show... Let's just call it show item, because that's what we're going to do. And then we don't even use this anymore because it was too... Our combat's too quick for it. But if we give it a custom name like test in here, and we put that up here, how does this know how long to show it for? Oh, this has got some really old stuff embedded in it. Yeah, this won't work. Well, it was worth a shot. Okay. What about... Okay, maybe we don't give up right away. What is this doing? This allocates a ability sequence component. Which is the action display element. Okay, that's fine. And it hands it some data, which is the ability sequence, which is the ability and the attacker, which is the unit. For our purposes, I think the attacker is actually the target, because we play the animation interact on the target. So in this situation, the target is the player who's interacting on this interact ability. So we can do get unit. Target get unit should be the attacker, quote unquote, with this really old system. And then get ability in parent. I don't think that's the case. In this situation, we basically want to do... Yeah, this system isn't flexible enough. Yeah. So it like figures out the name of the ability and that's what it shows. Well, maybe we could make a new one then that does something very similar. So if we go to our design data, is it under scripts? Front end. Action display element. Action display data driver. Takes an ability sequence. Okay. So we basically want to show this thing, but instead of operating on an ability sequence, we want to make a new one of these, which is going to be like item display element. And then this item display element, instead of working off of these components, which are in the JRPG, we're going to come up here into infinite retries, and we're going to add a new data component. This new data component will operate on... Do we actually have a... Like... This needs an ability sequence because it needs both the unit to align with, and it needs the ability to get the data to display. So we do need some sort of data structure here to represent this. It looks like that's where I put some of these, and when they're like very specific, I make new ones in here. So let's make a item display component data. And it's going to basically have the same information as, or similar information to the alert icon. It's going to have a... Oh, that's... Okay, I see what I've done there. Is this what I use to allocate and deallocate the object? It is. Okay. Weird. Item name. Unit. inside of the show ability name effect, instead of modifying this one, well, it's not letting me undo. I will revert that later, but we will come back up here. We will... we need to open back up the design data prefabs. Sorry, I'm losing track of where we are. Shouldn't have closed everything. Abilities, tiles, interact pickup. Instead of this using this show name ability effect, we're going to make a new ability effect. This will be show item ability effect. This show item will do something similar. There we go. Show item ability effect will construct a sequence. This will make a new item component display, item display component data. That will have a unit that it's going to align to, and it's going to have a item name that it's going to, for now, just use this custom name to set. Then we are going to allocate a item display component. We don't care about this anymore. Yeah, we don't care about this. We will find better ways of tracking the item that are more consistent. But for now, we will just set it up like this. We can get rid of this comment. So it'll construct an item display component data. It'll pass that in and allocate an object of this type. And that type will be item display component, will be its name. We need to go into the front end, and we need to create a new pool of objects of this type. So we're going to go core front end sandbox. We're going to come into here. We're going to go into combat UI pools, show action display element. We're going to copy this. We're going to have a new version here, which is the item display one. So that'll be item display element. It will have this as its name for when it's being allocated. We'll keep 2 of them around. I don't think we should ever need more than 1 in this pool, but we'll hold on to it. We'll call this item display element. That's how this should be named as well, for consistency. Okay. So that should make it so that we can actually create these objects. So now we just need to set this object up correctly. So instead of having action display data-driven parent component, we will instead have a item display data-driven component. Okay, copy that name, open this, rename, and this will operate on item display component data. This is in the wrong folder structure. That's fine. We can take this and move it up into here. Data-driven parent components. And instead of being part of infinite retries, it will, or part of Era of Embers namespace, it'll be part of the infinite retries namespace. Okay, it looks like most of these other ones aren't actually part of the namespace though, they're just outside of the namespace. I just chose to namespace Era of Embers. That's not entirely true. I did it for ones that are overlapping. I don't think it's going to matter that much. We'll leave it. They should probably all have the namespace realistically. So then once we have this, this becomes the new parent component. We remove this one. Now what was this one doing? This one was grabbing the unit action display components. Right, this was kind of chaining into the unit. So we need to do something similar. So we're going to copy this. We're going to make a new folder in here. And this folder will be for item display components. We're going to paste a copy in here of the thing. This will be action display. This will be item display unit screen component. It will operate off the data of item display component data. It will be named... Oh, wrong one. I need to double click and have Visual Studio open this variation. Infinite retries. Item display component data. This becomes item display unit screen component. And then here, instead of attacker, it's working off of just unit as the name. Perfect. Cool. So now this replaces the ability variation of it with the item variation of it. And then that allows us to just have a unit data controller, and this unit data controller can handle the alignment stuff. So that all just works. We don't have to modify or add any new ones. We can just repurpose the old alignment system. The deallocation system, what was this doing? Let's grab these two. We're going to copy both of these because I think we're going to need to remake these for our item display. These become item deallocate and item name. Okay, let's start with the deallocate one. Gotta rename everything. This operates on this data. This all looks to be fine. Doesn't need any changing at all. This doesn't actually use store data, so this doesn't even care what data... Oh, but it needs to have the right data typing in here in order for the parent to find and use it. So yeah, no, it does need... we do need to copy this one. I thought we might be able to reuse the other one for a second. And then this one here becomes item. This one becomes infinite retries. And then in here, instead of store data ability, we use store data... We also need to replace this to use the correct data object. And this becomes stored data item name. And we can just directly assign the text to that. Okay, then we just need to replace the components and this should just operate. We should be able to have the item name appear above the character's head. Yeah. So item display goes here. This needs a reference to this object. This one gets removed. The item display name screen component goes in here. It needs to have an object, or needs to have the text object. And then this should all just work. So that should be fine. We have them set up in a pool in our screen system. We can come back into Dungeon Forest W01, and then we can come back and hit play. And we should be able to walk up, and I think it should trigger this. We may have missed a step somewhere along the line, but we'll find out. All right, walking up, Did I miss something? Nope. It just showed test, but it did just appear. So let's see if we can change that a little bit. Pickup. Item pickup cutscene. In here, show item. We can say like armor. We could even say found armor. Maybe that's something we'll need to figure out how to like dynamically set, which should be easy. We did forget to update this, so that was actually using the wrong data, I think. Why did that work? I think because it didn't populate anything correctly. Okay, well, let's try again with the correct information and see what happens. This should hopefully say found armor above the character's head. And then it fades away. We did get a trying to allocate an object that is not found error. That seems bad. That is part of the deallocation in here. Interesting. That implies that something had already deallocated it, or we're hitting it twice. Anyways, it did update to the correct text. Item pickup cutscene. Yeah, that just kind of gives it the name and the unit. There's like a lot of bulk setup. It took us like 20 minutes to get this up and running. But like once you have the bulk set up, it's really easy to just add more data to the item display component data and then just create a whole bunch of new components that just do things and pass that information across. It's a lot of skeleton, but once the skeleton's in place, it's very quick to add a lot of functionality really simply. Found armor displays for a few seconds. So if we go back to the item display component or element, this is saying for a duration of 0.7 and a fade of 0.7. Are those back to back? Yeah, it's a 0.7 delay, and then after that's delay's done, then it'll do a fade as long as we have a canvas group. This component must be added below the alignment unit component or it will potentially get called after and the text won't be in the right position. Okay, good to know. We are still doing that, so that's fine. So I guess out of curiosity, we could make this like 5 seconds if we wanted. I think I might want to have it not based off of a duration, but instead have like some sort of event or callback that tells it to close after the dialogue has finished. This is really fascinating to me. I'd like to see if it's possible to figure out what is going on here. Like, why is it doing a double deallocation? What are we displaying and deallocating? Oh, we do like on effects stuff on the tiles that isn't rendering anymore. That's interesting. It's all turned off, but internally it's still spawning and deallocating stuff. Weird. I might want to optimize that at some point. Partial removal of functionality. Okay, so we got to deallocate here. This is for the audio system, though. So that's fine. The object it's trying to deallocate is an audio effect. Yeah, that's okay. This is still deallocating audio. This is deallocating some sound effects. Lots of sound effects. Okay. Deallocate action was hit once here. Oh, interesting. The objects don't match. It thinks it has a pooled... Oh, that makes sense. I missed that. I missed it. Okay, I see the problem. Inside of here, we're trying to deallocate an ability sequence component when we need to be trying to deallocate a item display data component. And they didn't match. We're trying to deallocate ourselves, but as the wrong type of object. And we need that first identifier to tell us where which pool we're trying to deallocate from. Okay. Simple copy and paste of the components and reuse and like not fully reading the whole chunk. It's fine. Okay. It wasn't really affecting anything. I just think it wasn't deallocating them, which would have become a problem as we start collecting more items. It would keep trying to reuse the same one over and over again. Cool. So that is functional now. Let's see if we can also make it so the information being displayed is dynamic. So if we come into the item pickup, can we I don't know if I like this, but at the same time it makes sense. Can we reference the add item ability effect? I don't think I do this anywhere else at this time, and I might need to give this some thought after the stream on whether or not this is the way that I want to long-term build things. But we should be able to grab the item name. But this isn't actually the item name. This is poorly written. This is actually the item ID is what this really is. Yeah, it's really the item ID. So from here, we need to do inventory manager dot get. We're going to need access to the correct using files. So using Unity Game Foundations. So we don't want get item, I don't think, because that's going to get all the items. We don't want to do that. We want item, find item by ID. So given the item ID that we're going to be adding, find it. And that should give us an inventory item. Inventory item. And then from that inventory item, we should be able to get its name. Is it in the definition? How do we do this elsewhere? There must be an example. This is where we create the items. There must be some way. Ooh, we have a whole data-driven component system for this. That means we must have some sort of display system. We have the stats. Definition.displayName is the information we're looking for. So we could do something like inventory item.definition.displayName, and we could do found plus the name plus an explanation point at the end, plus some punctuation. And then we don't need custom name anymore. Cool. And I think that should work. So we should be able to walk up here and it'll tell us whatever the display name of the item that we've added to our inventory is. So we'll walk up, hit the button, it fails. That's because we probably didn't add the reference. No, I added the reference. What was the error? Inventory item was null. Interesting. So this find item failed. We don't do that anywhere else. Okay. So then how did we discover items? Test store? Is that a good example of how we do this stuff? Again, it's been years since I've worked with this inventory. Find items by definition. Find items. List of items. Why do we get back a list of items? That doesn't seem right. No, that's still not it. Yeah, because this is finding items that are in our inventory. But we kind of want to just know about items that aren't in our inventory but do exist. This is adding items. Item add, given an inventory object. Weird. I don't think that function's even doing what it says it's doing. Let's just find all instances of this. That's the code we just wrote today. This is getting all the items in our inventory. So this is not getting the tags or the definitions. This is getting the actual items. This is the testing store that we were just looking at. This is creating items. Find item by definition. Maybe it is find item by definition. I'm not seeing anything else we do here other than get items. Yeah, maybe it is. Oh. Maybe it's not inventory manager. Maybe that's the point, is it's not our inventory we need to be checking. It's like the base objects. In other spots, we do this by virtual transactions. Where was this used? Oh, this is a callback for whenever we add an item. Okay. Okay, that makes more sense on what that function's doing. It's just printing, and then printing a list of all the items in our inventory. We had an old interact system from Era of Embers. Interact. Interactable detector. Interactable item. This is the Era of Embers way of doing a pickup. And it also had to do with the unique IDs. No, that's not right. It just had a private reference to the item. Yeah, I guess in every one of these situations, we're basically trying to get the items. And if we fail to find the item, or if we find a list, if we find any items in our inventory, then we just create one. Then how do we know what the name of an ID is without having to create one? Oh, did I make a item design data? I did. Does this get used in spaces? Oh, only for constructing and parsing all of the catalog. So this reads in a TSV and constructs the database based off of the TSV information. So we have the idea of a design data, but the design data is only used to construct. It's only used for our import. We don't actually use it in engine for the name. There must be some way of doing this. Game Foundations, inventory. These are each of the different items, and each of them have a display name and a key. And because the display name is not part of the mutable properties, there must be some way of fetching this display name without having to create one. Is there any information in here for what these functions do? No comments or anything? So there's find item, find items by definition, find item by tag. This is getting all the items. This is removing items. I want to see what's happening. I want to see what it is doing at this point. We no longer need any of those breakpoints. So here we have an item ID of armor 1. We are going to try and find some data. Can I walk in here? I cannot, and it failed to find the item. Okay, let's add this to watch. Can I get any information about what's going on inside of here? Catalog. I'm wondering if catalog is what we care about. We can't see anything in there. Items. Catalog has a series of items in it. Is it... Find references to catalog. I don't reference catalog anywhere in the code at all. Yeah, that's what I thought. Game foundations.catalog. Catalog.find item. This is what we're looking for. I knew that this was being done somewhere. What is this collect flag? What is this doing? That's neat. So this is the type of flag that basically just tracks quest progress. This is something I built a while ago. I had forgot that we had this. Anything else doing stuff with this? Looks like mostly the collect system. So when I built these kind of quest systems, I had built it in with the inventory system so that I could make items that I would ask you to go find, like medical herbs. Honestly, a cat could be an item too. Victor items also do stuff, sure. Parsers, text parsers, okay. So this is the example then. So we want to grab this code here. Where did we even come from? We were doing show item. So instead of doing the base system, we want to do game foundations catalog and then inventory catalog. Capital inventory catalog. Thank you. And then inventory catalog dot find item. And then the value we're passing in here is the item name or item ID, which will be a string, which we are going to use as our display name for what we found. There we go. That took a bit of digging. I figured it was something else other than the inventory, but I had forgotten that the catalog was like a separate category of it. This is partly because it's not my code, but like a package from Unity that I'm using. So some of it's a bit of a black box and I don't know what's happening, and so it takes a bit to relearn. Yeah, so that says found mail, which is slightly confusing because it feels like some sort of old, like, you've got mail message. So if we come in here and we change this to chainmail, save that. It just updates. Okay. So then, in theory, that means we could do anything from that list of created cataloged items. So we come in here and we choose like revive. We could do revive_1 as the key. And then inside of this thing, instead of armor_1, we could do revive_1, save the scene, and then hit play, and we should be able to walk up and it should add a revive_1 to our inventory. Yep. I mean, I didn't check to make sure that revive actually got added, but I mean, the fact that it showed the correct text is kind of a good sign. Let's see here. We could also do inflict_1, and we could bring that up here to this one and add that to that interact. And then we could do 2, and I guess we could add a little bit of extra logic in here. How would we think to frame this? Would it be like x2, or would it be x2 here? I'm going to add a check in here for if the add item ability effect dot amount is greater than 1, then concatenate to the end of the string x plus the amount. And we'll add a space in there as well. Sure, that should work. So if it has one of an item, it'll just show you that one of. And if it has multiples, it will add X and the number that you're getting added to your inventory. So we found 1 revive. Next thing is going to be making it so that that found thing only shows up for as long as you have the dialog box open. So how do we do that? Sure, we'll go with this one for a little bit. Let's look at item pickup. Cutscene. So this is adds the item. This shows the item. This allocates the object. It looks like we get a return of the object that got allocated. So we need some way of storing the like UI piece that we show above the character's head. And once the player has finished the sequence, aka has pushed A through the dialogue, or at any point, honestly, we want to be able to say, hey, that thing that we created, we want to now tell it to close. We can do that dynamically through this object. It still has a reference to the item display component data. So we don't need to pass the whole object, we just need to modify this. So we can just add a public bool is complete, or should close, which will be equal to false by default. So we'll make a new one of these. We'll store it here, like so. Can I do it this way? Does that work? I'm not sure about the reference and the scope stuff here, but I think this should be okay. I think... Okay, we'll give that a shot. And then we want some sort of like... If this is the show item ability effect, we want some sort of... We're going to give Visual Studio a second here. It crashed again. It's coming up with some context issue. We might want to dig into what's going on there. Hide item. Ability effect. This will have a reference to show. So now this is twice that I've needed to do this. I'm not thrilled about this. I feel like I want some sort of like Blackboard parameter setup so that these ability effects can like manage these things. New action sequence. When we get here, we just want to do should. Oh, we want to access the item display data and say should close is equal to true. That's basically all this is doing. Yeah, I think there's a way to do this with parameters. I'm going to get it working this way, and I'm going to maybe refactor it a bit off camera. Because I think I'm bypassing like the component system. But the component system can only hold like integer values and strings. It can't actually like hold references to stuff like what I'm doing here. Yeah, this will work. I just don't know if this is the way I want to... Like, it's a lot of chaining, and I don't like it. Don't like it. Okay. So then... This will reference the add item, find the item we're trying to add. It'll display the text or it'll fill in the text and the unit into the item display data component. It will then allocate one of those objects. Then the hide version, when we reach it after the trigger cutscene, which is blocking. So once you actually hit A on the cutscene and finish, then it'll hit this custom action sequence step, which will just set the should close to true. And then inside of the deallocate that we have for deallocate item display, deallocate component, in here, instead of delay, we can add a wait for sequence step, custom wait sequence step. And then what is this? How does this one work? I've never used it before. Oh, because I need to find the references for the constructor like this, yeah, it just returns, and once this return is true, it'll move forward. So we can do a lambda in place function that has a return, and that return will be based off of the stored data inside of here, which will be of the type item display component should close. And once this is true, it will pass this custom wait step, and then it'll go into the fade. So shouldn't need this anymore because we won't have a set duration. It'll be based off of should close. I think that just works. So we should be able to walk up, interact with the object, the UI will appear, it will stay open indefinitely until you hit OK on the dialog box, at which point it will close. So this found revive should stay here forever. Forever. Well, this feels like forever. So then if I hit OK, it should start fading almost immediately afterwards. Okay. The question is, does this work back to back? Yep. And then, for the sake of completeness, we know that there's two pooled objects. So if we add another one of these interacts, which is giving us armor _1 at the amount of 1, was it capital A or lowercase a? Capital A, while some of these other ones are lowercase. Yeah, when we regenerate this inventory of items, we're going to make sure that's more consistent. So because we have two pooled items, by interacting with at least 3 pickups, this should stress test and make sure that it is reusing correctly, and there's not any kind of problem with doing multiples of these. Yeah, that works. There's maybe potentially a thing you could do where if you had enough of them next to each other, you might be able to interact fast enough to have more than 2 up. But at the very least, I'm glad I have 2 in the pool, because I feel like here, if I only had 1, it's definitely possible that I could have more than 1 up at a time. I'm curious to see if I can make that happen. Even if it's just like 1 faded, I'm curious what that looks like. There was no errors there, I don't think, though, so this all seems to be working. It's not perfect feedback, but it's definitely telling me what's happening. Cool. It looked like it popped. Oh! Oh, that's fun. It looks like it's reusing the same pooled object over and over again, because it's definitely snapping the fade off. Not getting any kind of warnings related to that. There's other warnings, but not related to that. Oh no, I saw it fade off there. It's just a little weird with the other one coming up over top. I think it's confusing, but I definitely, when I had interacted with this one, had seen like the ×2 slightly in behind. Yeah, it's just it's a little quick. I guess if we wanted to try and really make sure that it's not doing anything weird, we can increase this fade just for the purposes of testing to see if we can have 2 of them on at the same time. Now, the other part of the problem here is that I can just keep walking back and forth between the 2 chests. And every time I do that, I unlock another item. If I was to keep doing this over and over again, I would guess I'm keep adding more revives, because every time I do this, it's going to call the add item code. So if we go into Game Foundations, Tools, Debugger, and look at the inventory under revives, oh, even worse, it's not adding them to the same entry. It's adding a new entry to the revives every time. It's not using the amount parameter, so the way I'm adding an item isn't correct. I'm going to make that fade even longer because I think it is snapping sometimes. It shouldn't be deallocating though until after the fade is done. Oh, is this fade not blocking by default? No, it is blocking by default. So we shouldn't get here until the fade is done. I'm going to still check. Now in terms of fixing it, so in terms of fixing it so that you can't just keep interacting over and over again, the way that we normally do this for cutscenes and say once the cutscene has played, it occurs to me that we're not actually modifying the fade time because that's in here. So we need to change it in here in order for it to actually update. Changing it in the script isn't going to change it because the prefab already exists with its own value. If we were to make a new prefab or a new component with this value, then it would update to the new one. But I need to actually change it in here in order to actually see the fade be longer, which is why the testing was not working as I thought it would. Okay. In terms of the flag stuff, though, to get back on track to that, I think oh yeah, that's definitely fading over 10 seconds now. Yeah, okay, it's definitely failing to load if there's too many active at the same time. But it will work once it's out of the way. Okay, so yeah, 0.7 is fine. It looks like it's fast enough for it to fade. And 2 is enough in the pool to never have them fully break, but 2 is enough that you might see 2 overlap ever so slightly if you're quick enough. So I'm fine. I don't think we need 3 in the pool. 2 should be enough. Worst case, I can always bump it up later. So then, yeah, back on track. Flags. So this needs a custom required flag for this item pickup. Because we can't use the cutscene completed because this is a repeating cutscene. There's only one version of it. So we have to have a custom flag for each of these objects or chests or whatever it is that we're trying to pick up. If we're doing a repeat, like pick up, open the chest, do the thing, and it's like repeatable, and we're just reusing, and the only thing different between them is just the item ID, then we need a... What we should do is just do like the name of the room. So this will be like forest. Honestly, we should do the actual scene name. IT forest underscore room underscore W O2 underscore, or maybe even just bracket 416 4,16 bracket, and that would be a unique flag. And then this one would set it to complete because this is the set section, and it needs to be not started in order for this interactable to work. But this system for the interacts is only on whether it should load it. Shoot. This is only on whether or not to load this interact on the creation of the map. So we need to dynamically turn this interact off. And still have this so that it doesn't recreate that interact in the future. Okay, this is the same problems we've been dealing with all day. This is the same thing as the sword, same thing as what we were playing with the sign, same thing with all this stuff. It's just now a little more complicated because it's happening on interact, and we have a repeatable cutscene instead of a unique moment that we can like, have a flag that is being generated for us via the unique cutscene. Okay, so this is fine. So this leads into the next part of the problem, which is we now have it so that we can use an item pickup to trigger a cutscene, and that cutscene can unlock abilities and set its cutscene complete flag. We also have items, so we can now give it an item and it will grant that item into the player's inventory, and we did a little bit of work to make that have some UI to tell the player what's actually happening, so there's a little bit of feedback. I think it could use more, but it's fine. The next thing we're going to need is setting flags, and we're going to need that setting of the flag because I missed an aspect of this, which is that this item pickup acquired flag should be gated by a flag so it is not repeatable. I completely missed that the item pickups were going to need this functionality. It makes a lot of sense, I just didn't see it. So this set custom flag can be the flag that is required, but it can also be the cutscene flag is the flag that's required. It could be either of these two. The trick is going to be making the custom flags. Because right now we have to do a bit of design data setup in order to build any new flags. But I like the way that our cutscene system works, where if we have a cutscene, it just creates that flag for us automatically, and it just exists. So I think I'd like to figure out a way that it generates this flag ID name for this interactable based off of the scene we're in and the tile location of the interactable. And then not only should it generate the ID, it should also somehow add that to a design data that the flag manager can then generate that flag for us at runtime, so it exists to be set and checked. This is all stuff we've done before, but it's going to be a bit of work. We're at 3 hours. We're coming up at 6, which is what I wanted this stream to be. Yeah. I did not have YouTube set to live chat. It was on top chat. I apologize if I miss anyone's comments throughout the day. I see a couple of people have come in and left, but if there was a comment on YouTube, I may have missed it, in which case I'm very sorry. I think this is where we call it. I think we call it for today here. I think I might continue on a little bit more this evening, less like focused, like I am right now on the stream, but like I might play around with trying to set up this auto-generating flag system and making it so our flag manager builds all of these for us. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe there's just like a tick box. Instead of putting this flag ID and the flag status in here, and we have to like add something here that we'll also have to go add inside of our JSON files. Maybe this thing just needs like a tick box to say, make me a flag. And then it's just on the flag manager to generate it for us. I wonder if these required flags in these situations could also be auto-filled in. Like if I tick a box here, it also internally adds the same flag as not started. So I don't have to add any strings or drop-down work. It just like, I hit a box and it just like automatically says, okay, I'll make a custom flag and make sure that it's completed once this is done, is generated by our backend, and that this won't replay. I think that's what I want to do. I bet you that's possible. And if we want to make any kind of item pickup, we just tick a box and it just like will not be something you can get multiple times. Okay, cool. I'll work on that off camera. In terms of progress, I feel like we're moving forward for the first time. We've just been stuck for so long. I realized that also May was just like a lot of like Minecraft videos. That's really what May was. There was no game dev progress, but this was still a fun thing that I worked on. In terms of the things that I've been stuck on for questions, yesterday we worked on new map editors that solved this. Didn't solve how many branching paths and whether we do them, but I have made a system that should allow me to very quickly iterate and test. And I don't know what items should be found from exploring or how the player should acquire abilities, but I have built the systems for picking up items. So now I can start potentially answering these questions through prototyping opposed to just thinking about it and not getting anywhere. Now we can actually build the game, test it, and see what does and doesn't work. So it was a very productive weekend, and I thank folks for sticking around and the people who have been popping in and out. It's been nice to have the company, and this has been very effective for me. Thank you. For now, though, this is going to be Tolhi signing out.